yeah. Yeah, yeah. Yeah. Not here to make you happy, not here to make you sad. Your feelings are irrelevant when debates are to be had. The Belfast Bapcast, loud and clear, covering the topics of the sphere, Working overtime to bring you many stories. Waking up today, the same labor and Tories. The stage, it isn't our part to play. Is bringing you knowledge in this way. No filter, no fuss, just tell unfiltered fact. Much like the words on those Christian tracks.
Good evening and welcome back to the Belfast Bapcast. And we have back on Jessie Czebotar. I cannot get your name correct. Sorry about
Czebotar.
Czebotar. You were on with us earlier on in the week and we had quite a bad connection, so apologies about that. But most of your side came out perfectly fine, so that's what's important. So we had sort of left off in the round, you getting out of the system, and you talked about different survivors and fake survivors and people latching on and offering to make websites for you and then own your story. And so we'll sort of pick up from there, if that's okay.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, I was saying that is a huge problem, that there has been a huge infiltration into the survivor community. And really, we have people acting, agents that are infiltrating the survivor community in order to, take that control of testimony. Um, and that keeps survivors from being able to properly report, as well as being able to have proper um, due process in their reporting of the criminal activity that they have experienced. Um, with that, not only do they do that to keep, one from getting due process, but later there's a turning where, they use that information and begin to try to discredit, destroy your testimony, and, attack you as, uh, you know, with all forms of slander, misrepresentation, um, accusations, and, claim that they're doing that lawfully. Um, and I've had it be to the extent where anybody who, would watch my videos or come on to interact with me, the moment they popped their head up to make a comment or to say something, these people would target them and immediately get access to any social media sites that they were on, and then begin to, target their family members, their friends, and saying, did you know so and so is supporting, you know, Jessie Czebotar or another survivor? Um, that person's a liar, that person's a fake, that person's a fraud, and come meet with us so we can give you all the evidences of that. So then behind the scenes, they would lead these people with all the false information, taking tweets or social media posts or things that I or other survivors have said, and using it out of context in order to twist it and, paint a false picture in a false light of what we were saying or what we were doing. Um, so, it's been a dangerous, as well as a very coordinated effort that they've taken against, what I would call the general survivor community.
Now, you've been able to navigate that, I would imagine, with discernment because you've had Christ on your side. Other survivors aren't
Correct.
quite as lucky. What what does it look like for a survivor out there who doesn't have that relationship to fall back on? They're going to be taken
Yeah,
by
I
all the
think,
vultures, I
I
suppose.
mean, it seems like the targeting, the hits are the same, that the attack methods are the same. Um, the hope in that would be that, if you've been one of those individuals that's been attacked and targeted, Don't let it stop you from bringing your testimony forth. Um, stand in the truth and stand in lawful methods, of asserting your voice, being your own representative of your voice and your testimony.
I think that's a big thing. If you know you're standing on truth, it doesn't really matter what the outside world has to say.
Right.
The biggest thing is you believe it yourself, and I think a lot of survivor cases of even domestic violence, there's an element of trying to blame yourself, etc. And it's getting to a point of understand that you were a victim and it wasn't your fault, and own your
Hmm.
story and know your truth.
Yeah, precisely.
And that the is there like a larger community of like the type of survivor you are is very specific. So satanic ritual, abuse type survivor, that sort of element. Is there specific organizations that you have interacted with over the years that specifically deal with helping people in those situations, or
That I would say right now that I don't have a lot of recommendations for that. I'll explain why. First, because of the infiltration, that has been a huge problem. But secondly, because, in my experience, the Lord Himself was the one who, when I got out at age 10, I didn't have anybody that I could turn to for help. I didn't have anybody who would listen, whether that was a pastor, a teacher. um, Nobody wanted to hear or even ask if I was okay or what I needed in that process. But, in that, because the Lord knew my situation, what He provided for me was very unique. Our church at that time had a library, and that library was filled with lots of missionary stories. Those stories, you know, talked about, these missionaries' experiences with communists like Corrie ten Boom. When I first hers was one of the first books I read, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, like these are the people I'm dealing with." And I saw how she, went through all that she went through, and she has more books than her first one, The Hiding Place. Probably the most impactful was her book called A Prisoner and Yet. That outlines her actual prison time in the Nazi concentration camps and how she, related to the Lord in those times. And then her book, A Tramp for the Lord, speaks about after she got out of prison, how did she go forth and share her story? And, then other missionaries like Isabel and John Kahn. There's a book I just got done doing a book club on with Aquarius Rising Africa on their Patreon channel called Mountain Singing by Sana Morrison Barlow. That was another one, and it outlines these missionaries' journey into the pagan Philippine Islands and, how did they address the native pagans and, the witchcraft, the demonic activity, all of that's outlined. So, in that, the Lord gave me through, these books, um, the information that I needed to get through the spiritual warfare that I was experiencing and the aftermath that came with, with the release that He gave me out of the system because it wasn't easy, it wasn't, like the Lord said, "I release you from them," and immediately everything was fine and dandy. Quite the contrary. Um, I still because I was enrolled in public schools, um, I was surrounded by witches and warlocks. I was surrounded by people in the system who were constantly monitoring, making sure that I wasn't telling anybody any information about the system. they would taunt and torment me not only all day at school, but then I'd go home and at night, they would astral project and, I was dealing with all this supernatural activity such as, demons choking me in the night, witches astral projecting in and scratching, marking my whole body up, ripping me out of my bed when I was trying to sleep or, attacking me in my sleep or dreams. It was so bad that I had to actually sleep with the Word of God open on my chest. Like I literally would just put the Bible on my chest, and that was the only way I would get sleep and relief from the attacks. And I had to learn to stand in my authority in Christ and learn to, anoint my room, anoint my uh, the property that I was on, and then rebuke, to say, I do not give you permissions to attack me. I had to learn to put on my spiritual armor in prayer every day, and I had to learn to stand in the word of the Lord. And one of the ways I learned that was I used to take our church had the Daily Bread magazines that would have like these covers and verses on the covers. And I
Yeah.
used to cut all those I'd cut those off with those verses and the pictures, and I'd line them on my walls, and then I'd lay in bed at night, and I'd memorize the word of God, so that I could stand in it. And all those were ways that the Lord taught me, you know, to, um, to deal with the spiritual warfare that came with what I had, been, um, forced to endure as a child. And then, later in life, um, I would say that even as a kid, there were times the Lord, would comfort and bring healing to things that I had been through. Um, there were kind of like surface level healings. But then there came a time, in 2016 is when the Lord took that healing to a much deeper place. And part of that healing process was in putting, the things that had happened to me, my testimony, in affidavit form. And as I began to do that, the Lord began to minister in a very deep place and, walked me through all of that. So, my first encouragement to people is to turn to the Lord. Trust Him to walk you through that healing, to know exactly what you need. Um, at the same time, I'm not saying it's wrong to have others to help you or pray with you as you walk through that. Sometimes, we do need a counselor or somebody to talk to who, understands to an extent. But I think the problem that most of us with that kind of nature um, of abuse, our problem is that not
That's
many
one. Okay.
people, yeah, fully understand it. They don't know the depth. They have their, procured methods, their band-aids that they like to put on. But do those band-aids, really bring the healing? Um, what I
No.
find for most of them is that it's like a band-aid being slapped on a deep infested wound. You know, what you really need is somebody to get in there and do deep wound cleaning, and you're just not going to find that. And then you get those
And
that
what
are
you were
in
saying as
guise.
well,
What was that? I'm sorry.
what you were saying as well about, you were saying about not allowing the evil to come in and rebuking it. That is a big thing. It has to have informed consent, and it's about noticing that ahead of time and seeing it coming, and that's not about it being your fault or anything. It's about being aware that there's a spiritual warfare going on at all times.
Yeah, yeah, that's correct. And and that warfare even leaks into the clinical field, whether that's counselors, whether that's, people that claim to be survivor advocates. Um, the enemy has infiltrated those camps, and that's the reality of the situation. It's not saying every single counselor, every single therapist is evil or bad or a part of the system, but it's really, you really have to pray and be discerning, you know, and a good way to put it is that we're often taught to treat our sufferings and our trials as though there is something evil or shameful or bad, or something that we have to carry as a stain and a label, um, against our personhood and against our future. And you know many keep us under that suppression, that stain, that label, that guise. But that's not who God has created us to be. The Spirit of God has set us free and given us freedom. He's the one who's our healer, and He's the one who makes us to stand. And so, why would we continue to suppress ourselves, under a condemnation that's not ours to bear, when the moment we confess, the moment we bring whatever happened to us before the Lord, He cleanses us from all unrighteousness and restores us to that proper place of right standing. What they don't teach us is how to live. And that's what the Lord teaches us, is that we have life. We have a new life in Christ. And why would we give that up or surrender that to remain under a bondage and oppression? Um, it's time for those chains to be broken. It's time for that yoke to come off our shoulders. And it's time for us to learn how to live, you know? So that's kind of my
So
complex feelings on all of that.
tw- 2016, you said that you started getting a form of deeper healing when you were putting things down in affidavit form. So was that you beginning legal prosecution or
That
legal
wasn't quite when I
proceedings on it,
began
or
the
just
legal. Yeah, those didn't begin until later, closer to 2021. But that began the process. When the Lord started working on me to be able to start, forming my testimony into words. Um, so that's when He called me, to be able to do that. And that call, He just outright said to me, I was working one day. I worked as a chaplain, and did processing classes at a homeless shelter. And as I was riding the bus to help pick up some of the people for the shelter, the Lord, clear as day, just said to me, "You will give your testimony in full." And at that time, I didn't know what it all would entail. But the all of a sudden it was like a fear gripped me, because I knew, it's like I had been threatened as a kid that if I ever tried to tell, if I ever tried to, um, talk about the system, that they would not only eventually kill me, but that they would, take out the lives of those that, my family, those I loved. And so when that fear came at me, I began to plead and beg with God, and I said, Lord, I want to be obedient. I want to do what you're asking me to do, but that they'll kill my whole family, you know. So I'm asking for your protection. I'm asking that if I do this, that you'll put a special guard and, on that. And, and the Lord let me sit there and beg and plead with Him. And when I was done, guess what the Lord said? He said, "No." He said, "You will do it right in front of their faces." And I knew in that moment that, you know, I had to make that choice. What if I went forward with my testimony in full? and everybody ended up dead. What if nobody got out, or let's say even one child got out? Was I willing to pay such a price for one person to come out? And I had to count that cost, and it was like, okay, Lord, okay, like, even if it's just for
I
one
think
child, I'll lay it all on the
even
line.
just shining a light, just shining a light on
Yeah,
it alone is something that needs to be done, because uh, like the media had done such a good job in the 1980s with the whole satanic panic thing of
right.
bringing just such an air of like a joke around these sort of things whenever it clearly does go on, and there does need to be more of a light shone upon it. There's clear ritualistic killings go on within the UK, within Ireland, within the United States, but they're just glossed over.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so true. It's badly glossed over. And, you know, each of us has to not be dependent on others. At the end of the day, it comes down to, our relationship with the Lord. What is the Lord asking of us? And our obedience to that. Will we be obedient to do his will? And, you know, when you count the cost against that, really it comes down to, will you be obedient or not?
And how has life looked for you since you took up your cross and you know done what was asked? I imagine
Yeah,
you've been given blessings. And
yeah, it's been crazy. It has come with great cost. Some of that cost being the lives of one, my one son, and then my brother and other relatives. There certainly has been a price to pay, but with that, it's been grueling. It's been a war and a fight. Yet every step of the way, the Lord has been faithful and true. And He's opened up avenues for me to share my testimony in full, where people have heard all the way around the world now. And, has had me go into the courts and fighting with the courts, bringing my testimony and affidavits there as well as to, for those who want to kind of look into that, where my testimony has been, a great resource is timothycharleshomeseth.com. He's the war correspondent that has permission to put my information out, and you'll find on his website there not only my affidavits, but if you look up my name, Jessie Czebotar, I'll spell it so people have that, Czebotar. But if you look up Jessie Czebotar and Congress petitions, you'll also find my Congress petitions on there. If you look up Jessie Czebotar and special reports, you'll find the special reports that I've put up on there as well. So that's a really great way to keep up to date with what's currently happening in regards to that for
well,
me.
that, and it's also a good resource for people to verify what you're saying as well, because like you said, this space is so infiltrated with charlatans and
Yeah.
people with fake stories and all the rest. And I mean, even from the other side, I interviewed a supposed ex-Satanist, Zachary Keane, and just talked utter crap. Like, it was clear that he was talking nonsense. He said that he had been saved, etc., but he was glorifying the sin constantly. It was like there was no glory give to Christ. It was all about the sin. It was like, clearly he's just sort of on this circuit for what he can make from it, or certainly that's my assessment. Maybe I'm completely incorrect, but certainly that was the vibe I got from it. And there's certainly plenty of other survivor stories or I've listened to where, well, you know when somebody's telling the truth and when somebody's not, and I've always found your story to be very genuine. So
Thank you. Yeah, it is difficult
it's
to
not.
discern and go ahead.
I was going to say there's no need to thank me. I mean, it's unfortunate that the story has to be true, obviously, but it is
Yeah.
clear to me anyway that you're definitely telling the truth. And where do you currently live in the United States? Are you in a nice sunny part, or
I wouldn't say it's always nice and sunny. So, yeah, I'm in the middle of the state
it's
somewhere. I'll put it that way.
proper winter time here? That's in the jumper this evening. Um, when you're so given with your time. I mean, I just randomly sent you an email and you'd be more than happy to give up, a couple of hours of your time. And obviously, you're constantly doing that. And how do you then fend for yourself financially? And obviously, you've asked
Yeah.
nothing of me, or you're just giving
Yeah,
your
no, I
testimony.
got
And
and I'm getting a little lag there cutting in and out, but from what I think you asked, I the Lord's given me I've established my own business, which people can find on my website, kingdomlivingwithjessie.com. So on that, you're connected to that, you'll find my courses, my workshops, the different events that I do. I also have a channel on YouTube as well as Rumble, which is called Kingdom Living TV. So on that, for me, the most important thing is teaching people how to live, um, according to scripture and how to develop that relationship that we have with the Lord. Why? Because he's given us such a great authority. And the majority of us, we don't know how to walk or stand in that authority. We don't know how to put on our spiritual armor. We don't know, how to receive healing from the Lord. We don't know how to go forth and do the good works that the Lord has prepared for us to do. So beyond my
it's
testimony,
proper teaching.
yeah,
So I was just saying, proper teaching is all but dead.
yeah, so beyond my testimony, I'm really invested in equipping people how to live. So you can find all that, and I encourage people. A lot of my workshops are coachings are online, and you can see when those come up. Um, I'm done with. I have one more coming up November 7th and 8th here, and then we'll be kind of done for the year. But next year I'll have much more, so you can watch and see when they're available, and you know join in. You know, let me know if you if you pop into a workshop
If
or coaching and you found me on the Belfast Bapcast. Let me know.
if somebody was to be moved by your time and the stuff that you're saying about the armor of God and equipping yourself and standing, that's language that I understand because I grew up in a church background, but to 90% of the world who are godless and who have not experienced the Bible or that sort of speak, like what would you say to someone in that position? Like how would you encourage them to start finding out about God? And
Yeah. On my I think it starts with knowledge of, you know, our greatest enemy. Even those who, don't know Christ, can admit that there is a suppression and oppression in this world that impacts all of us. And I have the answers to what that is. That's the Luciferian Brotherhood system and their sovereign military order. So where can you find out about that? On my website, kingdomlivingwithjessie.com, I have my latest series, the Unveiling of the System, in that I begin to step by step unfold what is the system, how is it working, how is it operating. Then I encourage you to join my land assignment coaching courses, or land assignment coachings. In those land assignments, 1 through 4, I begin to teach you how to read that system's communications, both at a regional level as well as international. So, what I mean by that is that, every city, every town, every, country that you're going to go into and visit is going to be identified by the Luciferian system's sigils or coat of arms. You will find one for every single one. But did you know that those sigils and those coat of arms tell you about the system? They're going to use their hidden language in the signs and the shapes, the different images that they put on those sigils or the coat of arms to tell certain things. So in my land assignments 1 through 4, I focus on the regional communications, which, a city seal is gonna it's a circular seal that you'll find for every city and state. And that seal will have, images in the middle. Then usually it has a middle layer here where it has words, and it's read like a clock. The hidden language behind it, is for those who are in the higher levels of the system. As they go into a city, they see those seals and they understand, one, which principalities are in charge of that city. They understand which brotherhood orders are overseeing that area and that territory. They understand which of the Masonic lodges, whether the Northern or the Southern Lodge, has more control. And they understand if there are secret underground military installations, labs, facilities, or underground Nazi submarine lines. All of that information is hidden in symbols in those little seals, and I teach people how to read those, and then I teach you how to find it, how to know where it is in your area. In the second land assignments, I talk about the layouts of the cities. There's 2 designs that are used in the system. Those layouts indicate where the underground ritual ground is under your area. Also, it will tell you where some of the altars are. So I teach you how to, understand that layout and what the above ground map tells those in the system about, what's underground and how to access it. In Land Assignment 3, I get into knights and priestesses who are those who will have the regional oversight in areas. I share with you how to find the knights and priestesses who are the regional brotherhood and sovereign military leaders in your area, and how you can begin to pray for them by name. And I teach you how to develop a prayer strategy to begin to tear down, the enemy's altars in your area. Um, then in Land 4, we get into the structure of the buildings, because not only does the layout of the buildings tell them information, but the structure of the buildings themselves tell the Luciferians what is offered in that building. I do a much deeper dive into that topic in my courses, Architecture and Altars, where I connect, how they use architecture and how the architecture tells them and tells you where the altars are, what type of altars they are, and who the altars are to, and what type of sacrifices they'll be doing on the altars. Then in the international land assignments, I break down, teach you how to decode and understand what they're communicating with the crest or the coat of arms. You'll find those same coat of arms and crests connected to every Catholic church, every priest, every archbishop, every pope, and over every Catholic school. And what those coat of arms tell them is, it's kind of like a airing of their specs or their specialties. You know, as they look at those, it says to, you know, each other, hey, here's the magic that I specialize in. Here's my specialty training. Here's my skills. Here's what I'm bred for in the system. And here's what I can train others up to do, particularly the children. So they'll air their coat of arms as
Within
their
this,
training specs.
within the system, would the Jesuit order have been quite prevalent?
Well, I get into in the unveiling of the system that the Jesuit Catholic Church is just one of the five departments. When you get to the regional, everything within the system is, split into quadrants first. So you have quadrants internationally as well as quadrants in the United States. Then each of those four quadrants, either internationally or in the United States, are going to be split into regions. Those regions, as they break down, will have the five departments that are going to oversee the system's assets and the training of those assets. And those five departments are going to be your Masons, your Jesuit Catholics, your Mormons, your Kabbalah, and your Satanists. So it goes beyond the
All
churches, it
pretty
goes
much.
beyond the lodges. It can include their teaching and training, can be in connection with the school systems, both all the way through elementary, high school, universities. So, that can be one of the main avenues they'll use for training.
And is the ninth circle, that is a real thing?
That is a real thing. But how I would explain that is that, when you break down the system, at the very top, you have five women that are known as the five mothers of darkness. Their job is to oversee, the system eh, quadrantly as well as over the United States. They're kind of like the CEOs of, we'll say, Lucifer's system. Directly under your mothers of darkness, you have the council. Your council is going to include like the United Nations. It's going to include prominent business members or organizations like the Bilderbergs, the um, WHO, uh, special general assemblies, councils, that are going to have oversight. And you're going to have a lot of rotating seats in the council. They act as the board of directors in the system. And, their purpose is to, take the orders that the mothers give and to enforce those orders quadrantly. Um, so, your councilman can sit on a seat internationally or in the United States. Alongside of your council, you have what's known as the special councils. Your special councils are identified as the Council of Five, the Council of Seven, also known as the Ennead, which is the name of an Egyptian bird god. You have the Council of Nine, which is also known as the Ninth Circle. You had prominent individuals sitting in the Ninth Circle, like Queen Elizabeth. She was one of the main heads of the Ninth Circle or the Ninth Council. But then you also have like your Council of 11, your Council of 13, your Council of 21, which also was known as the Black Tuxedos. You have prominent individuals like John Ramirez, who sat on that council. Overseeing the general council, uh, the top position in that is known as the Phoenix of the Council. Up until May of 2021, the Phoenix of the Council was George Soros, but he stepped down in May of 2021, and that's when you had the new Phoenix of the Council step up and into position, and that was Barack Obama. The head over the special councils is Queen Elizabeth's cousin, Somerset Belanoff, who also is out of Glamis Castle there in Scotland.
It's just a different world, isn't it? These families, and they would tie in back to like Nephilim bloodlines, etc. The likes of the royals, or they certainly would
Um,
believe that they tie back to
Not all. I mean,
divine
not
right
all.
rule.
Not all. In fact, the majority of them would claim lineage going back to Abraham.
Okay. And did you come across the likes of the Queen and stuff in your own personal experience, or
In my experience, yes, I did. Part of my
was that
training,
just
which
something that you
is
knew?
no, part of my training was there with the Queen, and I had encounters with Prince Philip. In fact, that went before the council with some of the like in the system, part of the training is considered ritual preparations for end time events and things. So in those, we would go to certain places where, we would do practice runs so that when the time came, the real ritual could be performed. And so that's something to keep in mind that, within the system, they choose people for positions that, they have waited centuries for. They train, um, where you are perfect in ritual. You're taught not to make mistakes at the upper levels, and all of that, you know, leading to the fulfillment of what they foresee as, end time things, what they want to usher in and bring forward. So, with that, I spend a lot of time in ritual preparation for end time things. Um, so some of my things that I've talked about with the Queen in particular was making cookies. Um, a lot of times as a child, they'll put you into situations that seem innocent, they seem fun. You have no idea that they're training you for something more. Um, but we can see these things, and many times they'll make them public for some of the hierarchy kids. So I'm going to refer back as I share my story. We saw, this ritual preparation occurring for Prince George. But, they would gather us all together, all the kids. They would have these big bowls where they'd have cookie dough. And they would just, begin to throw ingredients in there, and they'd have the kids, you'd have to stir all the ingredients with just a spoon. And as they would continue to add stuff, there gets to a point where it's so thick and hard that you can't stir it anymore. And that's when they're like, "Oh, just, find a way to get at it." And next thing you think it's fun, like you're stabbing at the cookie dough and cookie dough's flying all over, right? But what they're doing in that is stabbing preparations. They're teaching the children how to and building physical strength for you to engage in ritual killing. With Prince George, they publicized it, did it with bread pudding, and you see little Prince George, where they just keep adding all the ingredients and he's stabbing away at the bread pudding until dough's flying everywhere. But that's what they were doing, was teaching him how to, build strength and endurance for stabbing. Um, with Prince Philip, who also is part of the Ninth Circle, um, I had an encounter with him that went before the councils because he had an issue. In between ritual preparations, we would be allowed to go out into the yards and, just sit there. There was nothing to do. Um, I would pick the dandelions, and he had an issue with that and brought it before the council because I refused to, when he told me to stop, I refused to, as silly as it sounds, I refused to stop picking the dandelions. He did not win that. He didn't win that case before the councils. What was the judgment was she can pick as many damn dandelions as she would like. So that was what judgment came out of that. But that's my claim to fame with Prince George. Or
Well,
I'm sorry, Prince Philip is what I meant. Sorry,
even
with Prince Philip.
Prince Philip, even outside of that world, is renowned for being obtuse and saying the most ridiculous things at,
Right.
the most inopportune times, and that's
Keeps picking all
that's
the
in
damn
public. So I can only
dandelions.
imagine what he'd be like when he's. So, it's the same website I had listed previously, Kingdom Living,
Yes.
is where all your resources are at.
Correct.
And
All the
is there
courses,
any specific message
workshops, books. Sorry about that.
Is there any specific message you would like to get out to people?
Yes. I get a lot of people asking how can they help. The greatest way that you can help support is by sharing my information, my testimony. A lot of that comes in the sharing of my websites, my Patreon, my Twitter, as well as the website where all my affidavits and Congress petitions are found, timothycharleshomeseth.com. That's the greatest way you can help. I love when people interact, so I'd love to see people joining my Patreon or coming to the workshops, the courses. Let me know. If you heard about me here, make sure you let me know, and I'm happy to
So
answer questions.
I'm going to attach both websites again to the description. Obviously, thank you very much for coming back on again with us this evening. If you could stay on for a wee second after as well, and I'll just end the recording now. So if you could like, share, and subscribe, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us this evening.
Yeah. 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 Not here to make you happy, not here to make you sad. Your feelings are irrelevant when debates are to be had. The Belfast Bapcast, loud and clear, covering the topics of the sphere, Working overtime to bring you many stories. Waking up today, the same labor and Tories. The stage, it isn't our art to play. Is bringing you knowledge in this way. No filter, no fuss, just tell unfiltered fact. Much like the words on those Christian tracks.